Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Mikki Westcombe. We are the founders of Nexus Performance. Joining us on this wild ride is our heavyweight coaching team, ready to unleash their expertise to solve any problems in your journey to getting strong and jacked.
Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
So pump up the volume and let's get into this. Okie dokie. Well,
I feel bald.
I always look bald in these because I always tie my hair back.
Is it weird if I have like the bangs hanging out?
Bring your bangs out.
Does that look dumb?
I'm just sitting here like, hi.
I just want to look pretty for YouTube.
Oh, yeah, I always look bald. I don't even give a fuck anymore. Like, the downlighting in here is just not agreeing with my forehead. I look like a mole sometimes. So.
I said to Jared, I'm like, I look like the moon. Round face. He's like, shut up.
Oh, well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Nexus Unloaded podcast. We are actually closely approaching 100 episodes.
Really?
Yeah, we're nearly there.
For the 100th episode, can we all like be in it?
We'll have to do it on the gym floor.
That'll be fun.
We've only got 4 headsets as well, so it's probably going to have to be just like
rotate in and out and like substitute us in.
Yeah, tag team it.
Yeah.
WWE WrestleMania will tag team it. But we might have like me, you, Josh, and Wilbo in it. Just as the 4 that are, I guess, local here. We could do something like that, make a special edition. If there's any specific topics that people want us to talk about, slide into our DMs and we can rant and rave on that for the big 100.
Hundy.
The Hundy. But on today's well, actually, let's been a while since we've been on this. Let's give a recap. What's been going on, George?
Well, we had a big weekend. Oh, life's good.
Yeah.
I'm still eating a lot of food, training hard,
bulking, bruh.
Putting the food to good use by training very hard, as we learnt over the weekend. Got to facilitate the environment for growth.
Yeah,
so
stimulus. We need stimulus.
Anyways, what else have I been doing? I've been meaning to get my nails done for a while, so that's on my to-do list because they're growing out and it looks quite horrendous. So when I have nothing else, what else I've been doing? I don't have.
Are you training for anything specific at the moment?
Training for life. Nationals in November, so trying to make the most of my
USAPL Nats.
Yeah, it's in Melbourne, which is annoying. I thought it would be somewhere else this year, but gotta go back to Melbourne.
That's where most of the USAPL comps are down there, anyways.
But I just want something different. So that's okay. So training for that and trying to make the most of this off season, or like the short amount of time between comps that I've got. Yeah, that's been my main focus. So
cool.
Yeah, how about you?
I'm reshuffling life at the moment, essentially spending a few more hours here in the gym, working from the gym more often with Wilbo.
Which you guys are enjoying?
Yes. Yeah, I am actually really enjoying. I'm enjoying having separation between work and home life.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday, for example, on a Monday, I'm in here at the gym all day. All day, I say like 9 till 2. But I always come in here early. I just kind of sit at home and I'm like, fuck, like.
Yeah, 9's late.
It feels so late. Yeah. So I'm trying to get into like train before I come in, work from the gym 9 till 2 on a Monday, and then that's what I did yesterday, but I didn't train. I just kind of like was in the mood to work, so I just was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna start. And then I left it at 2. Go picked up. So I do like the shift swap with Will. I go pick him up. He comes in here. He'll train, work, and then do some small group coaching in the afternoon. And I took the car and Bowser and I went for a walk along Burleigh, and then we went home and did some grocery shopping and just had a chill afternoon. That's I called you and I was just had to check in with you and was just like, how's life? Like, how are you feeling? But yeah, like it was a little bit like weird because I start the day later than where I typically start. Like I typically am kind of at my computer doing either emails or client stuff from like 7:30. So when it's like an hour and a half that I'm meant to technically start work later, I don't know what to do with myself.
Yep.
And I don't take lunch breaks or anything like that. I just work all the way through. I just eat when I want to eat and stuff like that. Whereas obviously with staff, I encourage them, like, go have lunch, like, go get out, like, stretch your legs, embrace this Gold Coast weather. So yeah, that's kind of life at the moment, is just figuring out a little bit more of a new routine and kind of where I'm going and what we want to be doing with our own personal lives and who I am outside of work. That was a big kind of topic of conversation over the weekend, is why do I do some of the things that I do, and who am I outside of what I do? Because obviously Will and I are looking at producing an offspring. That's such a weird way to put it.
An offspring.
We are attempting to produce an offspring.
Sounds so it's weird when people say, like, I'm trying for a baby. It's basically saying, like, yeah, we're just like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, I use an app to obviously monitor like all the fertility things and the stuff. So on my Instagram story, I'm putting up a little bit about like, what I've been doing and some of the health subs, because people have an interest in it. And I was actually speaking to a girl about this privately in the messenger. I'm like, though I'm putting this stuff out because it's my own personal journey, I actually have no interest in helping other people trying to conceive. So I just want to put this out there. If you are trying to fall pregnant, though I've coached people through their pregnancies and the IVF or whatever it is that they go through. Like I've coached a few women through that process. I actually personally have no interest in attracting that kind of clientele. So if you're out there, don't ask me for help with it. I'm just sharing my own personal experience.
And please don't ask me, because I don't like kids.
Do not work with Jordan.
No, like I've worked with people going through pregnancy. Like that's fine, but it's not my like.
Yeah. Well, there's the skill sets that like we have around that if they're already an athlete working with us or something, which is what both of my experiences. I've had 3 or 4 women now that I've worked through their pregnancies with, and thoroughly enjoyed the experience and stuff. But I actually, don't have an interest in being like a women's health specialist.
Known for that.
Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of other fantastic coaches out there, so go that way. But yeah, so I've been using an app called Kindara. That I'm tracking all my stuff through, and like there's phrases in this thing, like there's a little community component to it where people put up their own, like, this is my cycle, when did I ovulate, can someone help answer these questions for me? And I'm like, fuck bitch, like have a look, it's pretty obvious, but obviously they don't know, so they're asking for help, but they're using like everything's like abbreviated, you know what I mean, like TDEE for example, like. And I know those terms, but you don't know these ones. In the context of this, that people like TTC and CM and like all these things that like I'm learning.
Yeah.
TTC is trying to conceive, and CM is cervical mucus. Just
I was like, don't tell me CM is.
Yummy. And like people are like, oh, I wish you like in my little question box I put up the other day, like Will's my sister-in-law, I should say now. She was like, I'm wishing you all the like sticky luck and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, yay. Like,
I'm such a child. I'm like, ew, I don't want to know.
Don't talk to me about it. But yeah, so that is kind of the journey that we are going through at the moment. And that's kind of been life. That's a long.
I'm like, man's training, man.
Well, you've got other things that you've been up to. Like you have got a trip to Bali coming up as well.
I'm very much so looking. I need that. Like, when you get to a point where you're like, I'm feeling like I'm not being the best version of myself right now. I need to go off grid. Yeah, for like a week. Yeah, I'm at
yours is always a week too.
I just need a week. Yeah, of doing.
Because you're like, oh, I'm going to Bali for 2 weeks. Like, can I have some time off? And I'm like, take the fucking 2 weeks if you want. But you're like, no, I don't want to do that to you.
I just want a week. I'll train over there. Yeah. Like, just to.
Well, you had 2 weeks off over Christmas, right? Or was that just under 2 weeks?
It was
maybe
2 weeks
10 days?
for Christmas, but that felt very much so like not a holiday, because there was expectations that we were spending a certain amount of time with Jared's family and then my family and
Christmas time never actually feels like a holiday for a lot of people.
No, because you're living out of a bag and
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out, how do I get from this side of Melbourne to this side of Melbourne? I don't have a car.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Whereas you're going to Bali by yourself.
yes. Solitude is bliss.
Yeah.
I love being on my own.
And then I remember you saying like you were just going to stay over there for a bit as well, but you've decided to actually book a return flight.
Yes, I was planning on staying for a month.
Yeah.
But I don't know how these influencers like do it, because it's actually not that cheap. So Jared and I looked into it and I was like, you know what? Like, he's not coming with me. I felt bad, kind of like putting a lot of money. Yeah. Like, I was like, we'll save some of the money for us to go on a trip together. Yeah. So I've shortened it to 2 weeks, but I'm staying in Sanua, which is quiet. It's known for its red light district, which I didn't realize.
Ooh.
I was like, this is such a pretty place. And like, I found out, I'm like, oh, okay. Anyway, there's a really nice gym there.
Okay.
So I'm literally basing my location off this amazing gym.
What's it called?
Look, I've forgotten.
Fuck.
Ask Cody. Cody trained there.
Okay.
They've got like plates. It's a gym where someone died, unfortunately.
Okay.
But it's a nice gym.
It's a really safe place. Fucking hell. Okay, so hopefully Jordan returns.
I will.
And we don't see her on one of those Instagram fucking real
Daily Mail.
4'9" midget dies in Bali. Struggles to get back up out of a squat hole and snaps both of her legs. Okay. So we've had a few different things now going on in our lives. Let's get into today's topic, which is a question that you had come through from one of your old clients.
Yeah.
So shout out Shah. So it was Shah, wasn't it?
It was Shah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So shout out to her. She is asked, so she was a former client of yours, and is off doing nutrition on her own.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's been a lot of skill sets that have acquired. Because how long were you guys working together? Quite a while.
2 years.
Yeah.
So it was when she was doing more like powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think now she's had a change of circumstance. She's living out of home. She's living on her own.
Yep.
And she's doing a half marathon soon.
Yep.
So
cool.
Yeah.
There you go. But she's obviously asked how to navigate nutrition on your own. So a lot of the things that I'm assuming you taught her over the course of your working together is being applied here.
Mm-hmm.
But as an individual who doesn't have a coach to guide them through that, it's kind of like you need to figure out like, how the fuck do I do this? Where do I start? What do I do?
Yeah.
Things like that. Because obviously we've got a lot of clients who have worked with us for, anywhere north of sort of 6 months and got a lot of different skill sets and things like that. And they're like, okay, cool. Like I'm ready to kind of like go off and do my own thing now. And, maybe they'll check in from time to time just as like an accountability thing or whatever. But for the most part, like people, you want to build skill sets that they can just excel and go off and do their own thing. But, naturally, it is one of those things that when you're in control of the steering wheel, it's very easy to veer left and veer right. Veer left and veer right. Sorry.
Or like second guess yourself, or be like, oh, is this the right thing?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what today's episode is on, is helping people navigate their way through nutrition on their own. Now, this is going to come from a little bit more of like a general sort of approach, because obviously there's so much context that lies within navigating nutrition on your own, in the sense that, are you going through a prep and you're navigating that on your own? And we've obviously got a multitude of different podcasts that we've done in the past that covers each of those topics phases, and exactly, setting up your macros and how to create a meal plan, like things like that. So we've done a lot of episodes on that. So if you're looking for the specific information around those, go back, listen to them, and apply that sort of stuff. But so today we're going to go through a little bit more of a general consensus of like, if you are just wanting to take control and move through that. So I guess over the weekend, we should probably preface this.
We should. We went to a Sports Nutrition Australia seminar. Conference. Yep. 2 days. Some big names.
Yep. Eric Helms, Laura Conlon,
Daniel Lennon,
Dr. Joe
Klemensky.
So some really good presenters there, and like Geordie Sullivan was obviously one of them. It kind of like segues nicely into the starting topic, which is and I guess the whole thing was really like underpinning people's whys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where it kind of came back to all the
Every
fucking time. Every
presentation.
presentation was like, why are they doing this? Why
is this important? Oh God.
Exactly. Jinx undercover. So why is this important at the end of the day? And I think if you're navigating this on your own,
Mm-hmm.
you need to understand your own why. So why are you wanting to pursue a dieting phase or a surplus phase or into a comp or a marathon
Or a change of habits.
Yeah,
or behavior.
exactly.
Like, why is that important?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the I should probably zoom in on this because I can't see shit on my notes right now. But yeah, so the very first component of navigating nutrition on your own is understanding your own why. Now,
Mhm.
if you are wanting to understand that in even more depth, I would definitely recommend go and listen to or read Simon Sinek's book on your why, like understanding your why. Jordan, I don't think you've said you haven't read that
I
yet.
haven't
have
read
you?
it.
Yeah. So I listened to it on Audible and it was really good. So if you want to get into that even further, go away and read that book or understand those concepts and stuff like that. But obviously in the place of this podcast, yeah, I think we need to understand why this stuff is so important to you and what your core values are.
Yep. And do you want me to continue
Yep,
going through the
keep
list?
going. That was a segue.
Okay. And then
I
I guess
handballed.
when it comes to like health too, like obviously people want to pursue a change for
Yep.
the better.
Yep.
It's not like, oh, when they make a nutrition change, they want to be worse off for it in the long run. It's
Yeah.
often to kind of improve something. So thinking about how is this going to improve my quality of life?
Yep.
And maybe you do this reflection and you're like, you know what? Maybe jumping on and doing a bodybuilding prep isn't going to be the thing that improves my quality of life. Maybe
Yeah.
it's simply like having better like
Body composition
diet
in
quality
general.
and body composition for my overall health and longevity.
Yeah.
So that is where this can be quite a useful activity, and it
Yep.
might really force you to kind of really think about what you're doing.
Yep.
I think a quote from the weekend was like, yeah, everyone likes new and shiny things.
Yes. Labels.
Yeah, but then it's like, well, at the core of it is this change going to improve your life? If not, maybe step back and maybe we don't need to go like too hard at this.
Yeah, 100%.
And then also just checking in with your values and what you actually value in life, and trying or seeing if there's like a correlation between this goal of yours, the why behind it, and if that is also going to be in alignment with the person that you want to be.
Yeah. And that changes as well. Like your why will always change. Like I said at the very start of this, like I'm going through that whole process myself right now. Like, you know, it's okay if that changes. You don't have to fixate yourself to a particular identity or particular core values and things like that, because your values and like that sort of stuff, like within reason, will change. You know what I mean? Your why will change as you accomplish things and progress through life or experience certain situations and stuff like that, that you realize that maybe wasn't as important to you as what you now want it to be.
That we also see that with people's training as well. Sometimes people train in a certain way because they align with that, their values align with that. And then maybe they turn around and they're like, you know what, like this is actually making me miserable now. And it's often because it doesn't align with those anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So it's totally fine if you want to experience different things and do different things in life. But I think before you pursue down any particular adventure, you need to dig into those layers of, why am I doing this? Why is this important to me? And one of the other notes that we have here is like, does this goal mean I have to sacrifice some of those values as well? Is like, is pursuing this actually going to have an impact on, you know, my core values and those
weigh up if that's worth it to you, because sometimes that your why and the goal might be so important that you're willing to give up maybe something for a short amount of time. And that's okay. But you also need to know if that's the case and be okay with that. And if you're not okay with that, well, maybe that's not really a goal for you just yet. We need to figure out like what it is you're actually seeking.
100%. So as you go through this process, it's probably really important that, you know, you do an inventory check on your habits and address some of the low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
So over the last couple of months, just a personal story here, like, you know, I've been talking to you on and off air a little bit about like my nutrition personally and how
Yep.
like, you know, skipping meals or not eating a lot
Not
of
having
food,
breakfast.
or not eating until, you know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon
Yeah.
some days. And it was, I'm not going to lie, it was really, really bad for months.
Mm.
And a lot of that was surrounding stress and that sort of stuff. And honestly, in the last like 2 to 3 weeks, like I am a completely different person to where I was before. Like I feel so much more energized. I'm so much more relaxed. My stress is significantly better than where it's been in the last like 3 or 4 months. And a lot of that really came down to addressing just the low hanging fruit that was going on.
Yeah.
So, you know, I recognized that, you know, I wasn't getting enough like fruits and vegetables in. So I was like, okay, well, like, you know, I need to address this appetite stuff, but I also just need to make sure I'm getting enough of those fucking like minerals and vitamins and that sort of stuff. And so I actually just went out and just bought like some health subs. And was like, all right, well, I'm going to start at the top of the pyramid, which is generally not what we recommend.
Yeah, I was going
you
to say,
do.
wait a second.
I'm reverse engineering this, but I was like, I know that maybe if I go out and I invest some money in some of these things, that actually then just got me back
Trickles
on track
down.
with like
Yeah.
building some habits around, well, I want to build.
Oh, because you know, like, you know, slapping a Band-Aid and just relying on stuff isn't going to help.
Exactly.
So that was the catalyst to then get you to then
Yeah.
move back down to the bottom and build
Exactly.
yourself back up.
Yeah. So it was like, if I invest some money here, that is going to allow me to create some
Gotcha.
routines and some habits around like my sleep.
Yep.
And my sleep was one of the biggest things that was impacting, you know, my stress and stuff like that for the next day, which
Yep.
was then impacting my appetite, which was then like having a flow-on effect.
It's a negative cascade.
Exactly. So it was addressing low-hanging fruits. And I was just able to recognize that within myself. And I'm not saying that's what everyone should go out and do. But yeah.
some people won't. Some people like actually need to be told to do
Yep.
this, because I feel like a lot of the time when people are in this place of wanting to make a change, they're really motivated and they don't think about all this stuff.
Mhm.
And they think, okay, like if I want to be healthier, I need to do 10,000 steps a day, and I also need to train like 4 times a week. And it's like, well, hang on a sec, like maybe you
stop adding things, like look at little things.
Yeah,
that you
look
can
at the
just
things that
improve.
you're already doing that
Yeah.
maybe we need to just tweak and modify and improve on
100%.
before we start adding in all this extra stuff that you think is going to help.
Yeah. 100%. So, and as you know, you're navigating this yourself, like you need to have a look at that. And that's one of the questions that I actually ask a lot of people when we're going through our initial inquiries is like, what is some of the low-hanging fruit? Like, what is some of the simple shit that you can be doing or changing or improving in your life right now that you know is going to have a bigger impact on the rest of your day or your week or your month?
Yep.
So if you start with some of that really simple shit that you're not doing well, or some
Yep.
of those poor habits that you can clearly identify that you're currently doing yourself, start there.
I had this exact same conversation last week with a client. So things had kind of fallen astray. You know, she's had a lot of things happen.
Yep.
And we're like, okay, well, you're feeling stressed. We're making not so great decisions in the afternoons because we're tired, overwhelmed. And we came back to the fact that, you know what? She hasn't been doing her meditation for 5 minutes before bed.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, do you think that if we create the environment for you to start doing that, is that possible for us to start tonight? And she's like, yeah, easy.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck yeah. All right, let's do that. Like,
and that was something that was specific for her. Like, I'm personally not a
everyone's
meditator or a
Neither am
journaler
I.
or any of
I
that
get
sort of stuff. So,
antsy.
yeah. But if she identifies that that's something that makes her feel really good to be able to go to bed, feel rested, wake up feeling more restored, to then take action, like make better choices long term. That's as simple as it can be.
Yes.
But people like to overcomplicate stuff sometimes.
Yeah, they'll be like, I need to prep every single meal for the week ahead.
Yeah, 100%. So another exercise, shout out to Luke Lehman for this one, that I have applied with a few of my clients as well, that I like people to do, is build out a list of what health looks like to them. Because your idea of health and my idea of health is different.
I was going to ask, what is your idea of health in like short term for people to...
Yeah. Okay. So there's obviously a lot of different components that make up health, right? Like financial, social, physical, mental, all that sort of stuff. So to me, what my idea of health is right now is where I can wake up feel energized.
Mhm.
I can look at myself and see, like skin has always been something for me that is a trigger of like, for
Yep.
me personally,
Yep.
like if my skin is really bad, that's a trigger that there's stress.
Yep.
So I can wake up, feel energized, look at my skin and the quality of my skin and see that like that's really good.
Yep.
And from there, like financial health and stuff like that as well. So I'm not constantly like looking through the bank account and being
Yep.
overwhelmed by invoices and
feeling like you can't do stuff because of
exactly. So
Yep.
I'm feeling on top of, the whole
Yep.
financials of personal and the business.
Mhm.
And then I want to be able to like my training health and stuff like that. I want to be able to enjoy coming
Yep.
into the gym and hitting 3 to 4 sessions. I'm totally comfortable with 3 sessions at the moment.
Mhm.
So consistently be hitting, 3 to 4 sessions in the gym. I've got like my social cup where I want to be going out and I want to be doing things with friends,
Mhm.
and forging better relationships with friends,
Mhm.
as well as doing things on my own and being comfortable in my own company,
Yep.
and feeling like I can come home and tell stories and have different experiences that I can share
And
with
not
people.
just talk about work.
Exactly. So I've got like my social cup,
Mhm.
I've got like my financial cup, and then I've got like I said, the energy and things like that to be able to do things which stems from good quality sleep, good quality nutrition, all that sort of stuff. So to me, like that is what my idea of
Yeah.
health is right now, because like when I look further into like blood markers, health markers, that sort of stuff, like I've been doing multiple tests over the last few months. I know that all my hormonal health things are all okay.
Yep.
Like there's nothing to worry
Mm.
about like physiologically.
Mhm.
It's more surface stuff that I need to be addressing, which is going to then steamroll into energy, mood, sleep quality, all that sort of stuff.
I think that's a great example because it shows people that it's not just nutrition.
Yeah.
It's a lot of other things, but nutrition supports you with feeling, having the nice skin, feeling happy, having the energy to go do social things, all of that.
And I'm thoroughly enjoying eating a more consistent basis of things right now.
Yep.
Like I said, like the quality of my food having been improved over the last 3 to 4 weeks
Mhm.
with a lot more nutrients and protein and stuff like that in there has had a flow-on effect to the am I rattling something in
Someone's
here?
walking past.
Okay, Will. Earthquake. Earthquake!
There's a big strong boy outside.
No one can probably hear it on the podcast, but we can. But yeah, so like I don't know, I think that the surface layer stuff is having an impact to like my own mental, psychological health, stuff like that. So yeah.
Fantastic. No, I think that's a really good example for people to, because like I feel like we can touch on it, but like when you say specifically, that might trigger people to be like, oh,
yeah, exactly. So like when we list out, and like one of the things that as I said, I've had a client do this in the past, like what health looks like to them, but also what benefits that brings, right? So list out, like I think I've given my client like I think it was 30 things. Like what are some of the list 30 benefits that being healthy will have for you. And it could be surface layer stuff, like I said, like good quality skin, but then that flows into like mental resilience is one of the things that we mentioned, confidence, like all that sort of stuff. Like when you can list out some of the benefits, like it will then allow you to make the actions align with all of that stuff.
Yeah, I get what you mean. So when you see all the benefits and you see how
you understand what health means to you,
you're more likely to want to take those steps. And I think too, like
to become that person.
Yeah, and this also kind of reiterates the long-term process of this
100%.
because it's not like one day can go by and all of a sudden you're this person that you want to be.
Well, what's like one of our catchphrases?
Uh-oh.
It's building
momentum.
Exactly. which one?
I was like, I think there's 3 of them. There's 3. Building like independence, not dependence.
Yeah. But like building momentum
Building momentum
is kind of like one of the core things that we have here, right?
Yes.
So it's like not expecting overnight change, but banking wings over time to become the person that you want to be.
Yeah.
And that's what flows into the pillar of like longevity and health. So let's go back to my notes here. But yeah, so creating habits, behaviors that align with the person you want to become. And that's like why.
That's
you know
the
what I
why.
mean? That's the why. So we can go into like some of the how, which is the you know, as we mentioned before, some of this question came from someone who had previously worked with you. So there was a lot of skill sets that they had acquired.
Yep.
But can you list out here these skill sets that we went through and talk about that a little bit more?
So I think in order to really do that first part of the exercise, figuring out your why, your values, you have to be very, very honest with yourself.
Yep.
And you need to have a level of self-awareness.
Yep.
And I think that exercise isn't going to be something that you can do in like 10 minutes, like while you're on a train.
Yeah.
I think it would require a lot of thought and reflection.
And back and forth.
Yeah.
Like you can sit down, you can write it out, and then I think you should probably come back to it.
Yeah.
And then reflect on that, sit down, come back to it again.
Because I think the thing we see is a lot of people want to make these changes. They bring on a coach or they decide to make a lifestyle change, but it's a knee-jerk reaction or it's an emotional response.
Yep.
And this has to come from, like, obviously there is some emotion there, but it has to come from a place where you're being quite objective and looking at facts like, okay, like this is the person I want to be. There's quite a few things that I need to change, but but also having the knowledge and the patience to know that, again, it's a long-term thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, as you've mentioned there, like having the, like looking objectively, having those constant reflections, because it's not just one. And we've got a multitude of different exercises that we give to people to help them build this portfolio, I suppose. So like there could be like, you know, those list of like, what does health look like to you? And list out 30 benefits. But it's like the stress tree is another really big one that I've had a lot of success recently with a few of my clients who are actually quite overwhelmed and quite stressed. So it allows them to look objectively and reflect on like stresses that they can and cannot control and outline all of that sort of stuff. And that builds that self-awareness. That self-awareness is something that people don't always have, and it can be taught. And sometimes it's a matter of like working alongside a coach where they can reflect that back to you, what they see. But again, some of those exercises will definitely help you build that level of self-awareness. Cool. So let's get into, we've kind of gone into a lot of like the psychology of this and the mindset, but I think that's really, really important to have to be able to go into like the application, the implementation of this. A lot of people just want to start there. How many calories do I need, and what should my macros?
What are my macros? Like, hold the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get to the underpinning of all of this and why you want to make these changes in the first place.
Yeah.
And then from there we go into the implementation of that.
Yep.
So certain metrics that you want to observe. Do you want to go through that?
And this is contextual as well. But I guess at the core of it, at the core of, you know, health, we want to make sure we're eating our fruits, our vegetables, whole grains, fiber, drinking water, and having quality protein come in.
Yep.
If you're someone who is more like athletic minded and your goals are more kind of driven towards that, then, you know, things like nutrient timing and supplements might then fall into that. But at like a foundational level, I think everyone can agree on this planet that fruits, veggies, fiber, all those things are really important and conducive to like long-term health.
Yep, absolutely. So you want to make sure that you've got your finger on the pulse with that sort of stuff. And in previous episodes, we've gone into the specifics of how much of each of those. So again, go back, listen.
And so making sure that, you're at least getting these in. And when we say metrics, it could just be monitoring. Am I having some vegetables across the week?
Yeah.
Different types with my main meals?
Yeah.
If not, let's add some more in.
100%.
And then movement in general, we know populations who are extremely sedentary and don't get, you know, more than around 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day, it increases their risk of like all-cause mortality. So are we at least getting some movement in, whether it be walking to the station before work, doing a walk when you get home, like something
pacing
like that
around the gym or something like that as well.
Yeah.
On
And
lunch breaks.
It's not to say like you have to be completely like a freak and like look at your Fitbit every 10 seconds, but just monitoring, am I roughly getting a good amount in?
Yeah.
And then like, are you waking up refreshed.
Yep.
You don't have to track your sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be like, I'm getting 8 hours every night,
Mm-hmm.
but have some idea of when you go to bed and when you wake up. Is that, roughly between 7 to 9 hours?
What's your quality and quantity
Yeah.
been like?
Yeah. Are you tossing and turning? Are you waking up wide at 2 a.m. like
Mhm.
every week because you're stressed? Like,
Mhm.
I think those are all metrics that people can kind of keep tabs on,
Mhm.
that are important. Stress management, I guess
Yep.
we talked about. If you're feeling overwhelmed, having a look at maybe what are the stresses, what's in
Yep.
my control, what can't I control.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, I think we spoke about this too. A lot of people might be overwhelmed because of poor time management.
Yep.
And I think time management is something that I've been talking a lot to my clients about recently, because all of these habits and behaviors come down to like, how well are you managing your time?
Yep. Creating good routines.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So if you are someone who doesn't have routines or habits, like have a look at your week,
Mhm.
look at when your work hours are, when can you get some training in, or when can you go do a grocery shop, when
Yep.
can you go for walks,
Build out a little weekly planner. That's
Yeah.
another exercise that we encourage a lot of people to do.
So
Giving
many.
away all the trade secrets here, guys. Jeez. But yeah, like a simple exercise is just like create like, all right, well, these are my shifts for the week. This
Yeah.
is when I want to train. I want to train on
Mm.
this particular day, and I want to do my groceries on this day.
Yeah.
And I've got an afternoon here. You don't have to fill that afternoon. Like keep it free. Go do something fun for yourself.
Yeah. Exactly. And especially like I've got a lot of people, they study, they work, they
Mhm.
train, they're doing comp prep. Like that's a lot of balls to kind of juggle.
Yeah.
So having a planner can be quite valuable. And then we've got here emotional knee-jerk reaction. So
Yeah.
is this more about understanding like if you're coming from a place of like overwhelm and it's like, oh no, that's
Yeah.
So I guess maybe self-awareness, it comes
Yeah.
down to that as well, having a lot of self-awareness around, all right, why am I feeling this way? Why am I acting like this?
Yeah, it's just observing like your emotional status, I suppose, and being like, am I making changes that are emotionally driven or logically driven?
Yeah.
And we'll get into like the changes and stuff like that in the past. But so we've gone over like monitor your fruit, sleep, stress, movement, time management, routines, basically.
Yep.
Those are all like things that you can either track as in a numbers value on a spreadsheet or in an app or something like that if you wish. But some of the other things that obviously you can monitor, which is kind of like people like, why aren't you telling us about our weight? Well, we can then obviously monitor weight,
If that's
photos,
part of your
measurements,
goal.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. If that's all relevant towards what you want to be doing, then have a bit of a look over like, is weight actually the indicator for where I need to be going? Like, am I an athlete that's coming into a comp that I actually need to monitor my fucking weight? Yes, okay. But if you're not someone that actually has a need to monitor I don't know what the fuck my weight is at the moment. I'm not driven. My motives are not driven at the moment behind what a scale is telling me. Mine are more like physically.
Yeah.
Like, is my body composition moving towards a better outcome? Like, am I looking at myself and seeing like a lot of, gut distension
Water retention.
and stuff like that? Okay, well, I'm feeling quite bloated or whatever. So in that instance, I'm using like, I don't take photos per se, but I look at myself naked in the mirror every time before I jump in the shower, and I'm just like, okay, there's something I can do about this.
Fit check.
Yeah, exactly. Selfie.
Whereas like for me, I'm the opposite. I'm in an intentional phase to gain weight.
Yeah.
How am I gonna know if that's happening if I don't track weight?
Exactly.
So yeah, I guess it's all very context.
100%. We're not sitting here telling someone that the success is driven by what is occurring on the scale. There's, measurements, photos, things like that you can be doing. So use that at your own discretion, I suppose.
Yeah.
So those are metrics to observe, and you can go as deep as that as you like, from HRV, blood pressure, resting heart rate, recovery markers, all that other stuff that we have a massive fucking list in our own app that we encourage people to track, and we just give them what's actually
based
relevant.
On what, I ask the person like, what's important to you, and then we do that.
How much do we actually need to track right now? And then we'll determine it based on that. So,
and this is the juicy part now.
Yep.
So if we decide we want to do an intentional phase of nutrition, whether it be a maintenance phase, a fat loss phase, a muscle building phase,
comp prep, whatever that looks like.
I think we want to avoid just diving into something without planning
Mm-hmm.
the duration of it,
Mm-hmm.
because, again, going back to that emotional response,
Yep.
it's so easy for someone to say, I feel uncomfortable, dieting is the answer, without
Yep.
going through the why, but without even planning how long they're going to be doing a diet for.
Yep.
And what like we see happen, people live in this perpetual state or mindset of like, I'm
Constantly
dieting.
dieting. Yep.
And they may not even be in a diet. They may be sitting at maintenance, but they have that thought like, I need to be in a deficit. I should make healthier choices. And they just live their life
100%.
thinking they're,
So if you're taking care of nutrition on your own, you should have a plan.
Yes.
As to what you're doing or
I can't be
or when you're
succinct.
doing this.
You hit the nail on the head, yes.
So it's funny because I actually saw Nathan Wallace is a bodybuilding coach that I love watching his own process. So I believe he's self-coached, and he actually put up a post the other day being like, I'm going to start competing soon, and this was my goal, and this was how much rate of gain that I wanted to be accruing. So he's in a surplus phase. He's just finished his surplus and he's about to start a bodybuilding prep. So slightly different context in terms of the athlete, but at the end of the day, he was like, I had specific markers that I want to be doing. I had a specific timeline of how far I could kind of push things to a point where I knew that my prep starts here and I have to start it to make change.
Yeah.
So he had a very clear plan as to like, this is the timeline of what I'm working towards. This is the end goal of that. This is the rate of, progress that I need to be making over that. So actually having that somewhat formulated, again, the layers below that really depends on like the specific goal of the individual, but like and having a timeline of exactly what that looks like to you, I think is really important. So obviously, because that it keeps that accountability, it keeps that consistency, because
if it's open-ended, you could be off.
Yeah, exactly. You can just fucking complacency seeps through, and or you half-ass shit because you don't have like a deadline. You know what I mean?
Or you're always telling people, oh yeah, I'm like dieting.
Yeah,
I'm dieting.
exactly. And it just never ends.
It's just
So I definitely think like if you're going to go into an intentional fat loss phase or any phase with intention, like know how long you want to be doing that. Like personally, I don't have a nutrition coach right now. Obviously my goals are towards like restoring health markers and falling pregnant. It's hard to put a timeline on that because like it will happen when it happens.
I will be pregnant tomorrow.
Not for a lack of trying. But it's one of those things where I was like, okay, there are certain things that I know I need to be improving on right now to put myself into a position to be able to fall pregnant and stuff like that.
Well, you've gone through you went and got your bloods done. Was there anything I need to address? Started sprinkling in, worked on your nutrition, sprinkling the supplements. Like, you didn't do everything at once. It was kind of phased
out based on what the data was telling me, which the decisions I needed to make. But there was no point where I was like, like I'm just going to go along with it and just see what kind of happens.
And the same, like last year I did like a 4 or 6 week diet, like brought my calories down. And if I had that open-ended, I'd not do it. And I'm a coach, you know what? I know, like I had 6 weeks.
You'd either cut it short because you're like, fuck it, I can't be bothered anymore. Or you drag it out because
well, I wouldn't be as adherent and I'd keep dragging it out.
Yeah, exactly. So like there's two different ways that people do it. They either half-assed it and they drag it out, or they just cut it too short because they're just like, oh, this is too hard. And it's like, well, fucking commit to the timeline that you've set and see what another 2 weeks of fat loss will actually bring for you, and then make the change out so that you can maintain that better quality body composition for a little bit longer.
And if you're cutting it short, is it because this is the right path towards your goal? Again, it comes back to like why.
Yeah, exactly. So let's have a look here. We've got our planning. Now there is a ratio that before we get into the rate of gain and loss, I think we should probably cover like how often you should change. So do you want to unpack that for us?
Yeah. So I guess we know that fat loss can happen at a much quicker rate in comparison to muscle growth, gain, all of that. So based on that, you want to spend less time dieting across your year and more time in like a state of growth
Yeah.
or maintaining.
Yeah.
And what you would probably hear thrown around is like this ratio of 1 to 4. So for
Yeah.
every time you spent in like a deficit or a fat loss phase, you want to spend 4 times that time. Man, I can't speak.
Yeah.
Either like in a building kind of phase or at least maintenance. And I love maintenance. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, if you're maintaining, you're not doing anything, because I definitely think you can still make progress at maintenance.
Yeah, definitely. There's still good changes that can come. It's just not an intentional it's not as much of an intentional change.
Yeah.
So to put that in context, like if you're spending a month dieting, then spend 4 months either out of maintenance or moving into like a conservative surplus or something like that in order to make the changes and stuff you're looking for. And when you actually put that into context, like one of the things when I have these conversations with people around like going into dieting phases and stuff like that, I'm like, if you spend 3 months dieting over the year for a course of 5 years, that's a year out of 5 years, or more than a year out of 5 years that you've spent not growing, not making positive impacts on your, positive impacts context dependent, but like that is a lot of time that you're not spent making growth gains, change, stuff like that. So
and I hate to always come at it from like a performance perspective, but if you are someone who wants to make progress in strength, powerlifting, like that's a big thing.
100%.
That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of fucking time. Not putting on muscle mass. So I think it's just important to be mindful of that, like that specific ratio and the timeline that you're actually spent doing and how committed you are to each of those phases, because you can be like, I spent 3 months dieting, but were you actually really fucking dieting? Like, were you actually in a deficit or creating an energy deficit in that timeline? In which case, like, you're probably, you're not quite hitting the nail on the head there. All right. So when you are going through a dieting phase, or more importantly, like a gaining phase, what is the rate of change that, or rate of gain or loss that people want to be seeing on the scale? Because again, if they're navigating this on their own, they need to understand
what numbers
how rapid things can move.
So again, like we know that losing fat occurs a lot faster, so you'll probably see a bigger rate of loss in comparison to muscle growth. So if you are someone who is looking at like a weekly average, you would have heard, or I'm telling you now, like 0.5% to like 1% of your body weight per week. So for someone who is 100 kilos, it could be 500 grams. Am I doing this right? Math. 1 kilo a week.
Yes.
Fuck, math brain. And then in a similar note, like if it's someone who is 100 kilos who is looking to build muscle, that might translate to like 1 kilo per month, which if you break that down into across the weeks, 250 grams, 500 grams. And obviously, like, you don't have to be exactly on these because humans aren't robots. But if you look at it spread across a few weeks and you can kind of see roughly those averages, then I would say you're doing a pretty good job.
And again, referring back to like Nathan Wallace's post there, so go check him out on socials if you don't know him. He's phenomenal. He was a great powerlifter and natural bodybuilder as well. So he actually put up like a snapshot of, I think it was like 12 weeks or something like that, where he was like, this is the rate of gain that I wanted to be getting. It was 0.25% per week, or 1 month per, 1% per month. And this was like, if you actually have a look, you'll see like week 1 to week 2, there was basically no change. Then from week 2, week 3, there was actually a drop. And then week 3 to week 4, it then went back up to where it was before. Week 4 to week 5, it actually then started to like make those marginal increments. But in saying that, it's not to say that he actually was like changing his calories every single week over those timelines or anything like that. There was probably like 4 to 6 weeks where it was a consistent block of the same calories, which he was like, this might be not moving as much as I want. I'm going to like make a small change here to drive that tissue growth that I'm looking for.
And this is where knee-jerk reactions again, like
exactly.
And on like the opposite side of the coin, like I've had people in a fat loss phase where they've been adherent and diligent for like 1 week and they haven't seen that desired change.
Yeah, they haven't seen 500 grams drop off the scale. They've only seen 300 grams.
Yeah, or they might be like, oh, like I think we need to like push things a bit harder. Like I'm not seeing anything. And again, maybe 1 week your weight doesn't change. And this is where maybe having different forms of metrics to kind of fall back on can come in handy, because I'll then say to someone, if we do your measurements and nothing changes at all for 2 weeks,
or your body, like your photos,
yeah, nothing changes, then I will consider dropping.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the time people feel, again, like emotional, like I've tried really hard this week, I've put a lot of effort in and it's not reflected in this scale number, and they feel a bit cheated and robbed and like I need to push harder.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's where you need to kind of separate that emotion. When this is hard when you don't have a coach.
Yeah.
Because coaches also, like who I coach, have this reaction, and it's like no.
Take a step back, slow down.
Yeah.
So just rehashing there. So set out a timeline of how long you want to be doing things for, make really clear sort of deadlines on certain things.
Yep.
Obviously there's wiggle room, like life happens.
Buffer.
So be transparent with that sort of stuff. Have a look over your ratios. So how often you should kind of be changing between dieting and maintenance and surplus and all that sort of stuff. And then have a look further into the rate of gain or loss that's going to drive some of your decisions. So if you're going into a gaining phase, 1% per month of your body weight is what you want to be gaining, or if you're going into a fat loss phase, 0.5 to 1% per week. And you'll notice there as well that we've given the timeline differences slightly different, because you shouldn't be looking, in a dieting phase, it should be over a week that you want to be looking at that average as well, because obviously things are faster in a fat loss phase, and when you're going into a gaining phase, like things are a little bit slower, and so you want to be having a look over, like you can still look marginally over the weeks, but also make sure that you're looking over the course of the month too,
long-term trends,
not just daily fluctuations and things like that.
Yes.
So gather your weekly averages and your monthly averages, and then make sure that you're actually heading towards where you want to be going based on your goals. What are some of the other notes here? You shouldn't go into specific diet if you cannot maintain specific weight or body composition for a period of time as well. So we've talked about like the yo-yo dieting effect there, where people just kind of like chop and change between those.
Yeah. I find too, like a lot of people, they find they need to be doing one or the other. And what they never practice is maintaining their weight.
Homeostasis.
Yeah. And a lot of people struggle with that. They don't really, and they're like, oh, maintenance is boring. Like, why would I want to do that? And I'm like, well, if you're always dieting or you're always cutting between the two because you're not doing either of them well, that's not going to be conducive to like long-term sustainable change.
And if we're looking at it from a performance perspective as well, like a lot of fucking strength gains can happen in maintenance phases as well. So maybe remove the fixation as to what you're doing with your nutrition and focus on your performance.
Yes.
And focus on number on the bar, and focus on energy coming into those sessions and timing some of those things a little bit differently, rather than some of those specific like weight number scale things and stuff like that. Like try and look elsewhere and see where else that you're seeing positive impacts and positive change, because you can find change in multiple different areas of your life as well. So I think it's important just to note that.
Because again, it comes back to health.
Yep, for sure.
What your perspective of long-term health is. And like last year I spent all year maintenance, and it was the best. I loved it. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Training was still seeing
massive progress.
Yeah. All right. So as we're making some of these changes, again, like narrowing it a little bit more here now on how often you should change your calories and what sort of rate you should change your calories. Because again, like a lot of people, they have the skill sets of created the plan. I know what I'm doing now. I know what habits I need to be changing and stuff like that. But I'm not a nutrition coach, and how do I navigate like how often I should be changing my calories, or how much should I change my calories by?
Yep. We're getting very granular.
Yes.
So everyone's different. But if I guess if someone if they've been adherent, that's the first thing.
Yep.
Before we look to make changes, I'd ask myself, have I complied with the protocols I've set myself?
Yep.
If not, you are not making changes.
Yeah. Go back and do that for another 2
Go
weeks.
back to start.
Yeah.
And And then the next thing, I kind of said this before, I jumped the gun a bit, but I like to spend at least 2 weeks before I make a change.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are like, oh, 2 weeks, that's so boring. Like, I'm not, but it's like, well, again, 1 week, fluctuations, things happen.
Yeah.
So if someone has seen a plateau for 2 weeks and they're looking at maybe photos and measurements and those things have stayed the same, because you can still be making progress and it's not reflected on the scale. But I think measurements are also another kind of way to assess things. Yeah. Like, for instance, I've had a client, 2 weeks, she was convinced she wasn't making progress. We got her to do measurements and like she'd lost like 3 centimeters off her waist. And I was like, well,
things are moving.
Things are happening.
Yeah.
Why push your calories lower than they need to be and make you suffer more?
Yeah, 100%.
So if things have plateaued for 2 weeks, then I don't make big changes. Like if someone's in a surplus, I don't like slap on 500 calories because we know that we don't need an excess amount to grow.
Yeah.
So it would be between like 5% I would bring calories up by, which from usual amount sized person, it's around like 200-ish calories. For someone who's bigger human, it's going to be a bit more than that.
Yeah.
If it's a deficit, depending on the context and the person, how they're feeling, it could be
if they're already in a deficit as well. Like if they're already in quite a significant deficit, you might take a little bit more of a conservative drop.
Yeah, like say if they're already seeing 0.5% change and they want to get that 1% change per week, maybe we drop by 5% and just see how we go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you started off in a very conservative deficit, maybe that's now your new maintenance.
Yeah.
Maybe we take 10% off.
Yeah. Yeah, we take a little bit more of an aggressive. So anywhere between 5 to 10% is kind of the changes in your calories that you're looking at making, and you'll assess that over a 2-week course.
That's what I do, yeah.
So like, for example, whenever I start with someone new, I always try and get 2 weeks. I call it like, what we're going to do is get some starting landmarks here. I want to
always put people in maintenance. Yeah.
So this is depending on where they're coming from as well. So like if they have no history, I'm starting with fucking, I don't know where we're even going to like what you're consuming or anything like that. Go back and listen to one of our episodes we have on like setting up your calories and macros and stuff like that. We have a range of calories that we kind of will typically go for, and I'll just slot in like a maintenance and I'll see where things are going, because they might have been in a surplus and have a lot of gut distension and bloat and inflammation that they're holding on to. So we might actually see a drop in that initial phase from like food choices improving, inflammation, water retention coming down, that eating less sodium and things like that. So we're probably going to see a bit of a change there. And that might be enough for them to be like, hey, fuck yeah, I'm seeing some good changes.
I'm feeling myself.
Yeah. And so we might hover with that for another 2 weeks after that first week block, even though technically it's actually their maintenance. It's just they're seeing all the changes that they're kind of looking for initially. And so we'll follow on with that with another 2 weeks. Okay, now the progress starts to slow down because the body is in a good place. We can actually drive that first chapter of fat loss or gain, depending on what their goals are. But I'll always get like 2 weeks of a starting landmark and then make the same decisions that you have there, depending on what their goals are. So 5 to 10% fluctuation. Yeah.
I also want to touch on that as well. And I think I don't want to be stereotype.
Yeah.
But I find a lot of females in particular come to me and they say like, this is my maintenance. I want to go into a dieting phase.
Yep.
And it's actually it's lower than what they could actually be maintaining
100%.
on.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes to being, I guess, okay with pushing to see how high you can maintain your food on before then creating a harsher deficit than what's needed as well.
For sure. And I think it's important to note that like a deficit doesn't necessarily always have to come from calories. You can create an energy deficit from movement and stuff like that as well if you're wanting to address things in that regard. So you don't always have to have a knee-jerk reaction with your food.
Yeah,
you can have a look back on your life and have a look at, well, what else can I be doing here to create an energy deficit?
If I'm only doing like 2,000 steps a day,
well, fucking move more. You
bring that up a little bit. You'll live for longer and like
move more, you sloth. So yeah, there's definitely other things that you can be doing rather than just constantly addressing nutrition.
Yeah.
All right. So, and that really comes down to the art of coaching, right? Like that's one of the things that we have here is there's always context that lies within each of these things. So, obviously this whole topic is around like helping you navigate it outside of a coach, but these are some of the things that we are addressing and why getting some metrics and some observations and stuff like that is really important before you start to just make decisions.
Yeah.
So have a look over all of this sort of stuff. So the next things that we've got here, I'm just going to have a look at how we're going for time. Holy shit, we're already over an hour. We might have to miss our case study.
We will miss our case study, yeah.
We can always do that in
We'll
another
do it another time,
conversation.
yeah.
But to be able to make change, we need to have consistency. I feel like we've harped on that.
Yeah.
And otherwise, how do you know
what to change?
Yeah.
And I guess the first thing that came to mind when it was consistency planner, like, you know, are you moving? Are you having 3 or 4 main meals a day?
Mhm.
If you're wanting to make a change, whether it be, I guess, outside of health, like, I guess, understanding how many bits of fruit do you have a day, vegetables. It's not like tracking your calories, but just having an idea of what's coming in.
Yep.
And maybe how you're structuring that across the day as well is important.
Yeah, for sure. The next thing we've got here is once you've achieved it,
Yes.
how do you sustain it?
And this is where you might see someone who makes significant amount of change in a short amount of time, and then they rebound and go back to
Yep,
the start.
they go back to the start.
And this could be explained by, well, maybe the behaviors and habits they were creating aren't really tied to that person they wanted to become.
Yep.
Maybe that was more based on motivation rather than, I guess, coming from a place of like intrinsic motivation.
Yep, for sure. I think that like one of the things we've got here is like they're seeking validations for others rather than their own core values.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like to me, once you've achieved it, like, and this just comes down to our own coaching, like, okay, you've achieved competing at this competition, you won your nationals, congratulations. What's next? You should always be having that sort of conversation. You should always be having that reflection of like, well, what matters to me now? Like, what do I want to do next? Is it another competition? Do I want to spend a period over the course of this prep? The reflections. Were there certain things that came up that I let slip through the cracks, and should I make sure that I address those things first so that in my next prep it's more successful and I have built a more robust base to be able to build upon. So whether that could be like habits and behaviors and sleep patterns and stress management and all that sort of stuff. Is it that my training, I was half-assing certain sessions and not finishing off my accessories and putting real effort into that? Were my food choices, you know, a bit sloppy and things like that? And do I want to build a more robust base of all of those things? So have a look. Once you've achieved it, have a look over the last phase and be like, what went really well and what didn't go so well, and what can I address in that section to, you know, improve on for the next phase.
And then if your why or values have changed, so say you did a powerlifting comp and next up you're going backpacking around Europe. Maybe you're like, oh man, I'm going to be moving and walking a lot with a heavy backpack. My cardio sucks. I'm probably going to have to work on my fitness or a bit. Like, so
100%.
maybe that's where, you know, something's changed, but it doesn't mean we neglect everything that, you know, our health seeking habits, but like maybe the routines that we set moving forward and our planner like looks a little different. Maybe we're spending more time outside walking, jumping on the bike. Like,
and I think I just want to note in there as well, just from my own personal, like I said, I don't have a coach at the moment. My own personal phase over the last 12 months is that I have not actually been seeking change in any particular like thing, like nutritionally, that is. I've been at maintenance myself for quite a long period of time, and there's been other areas of my life outside of nutrition that I've been seeking change with and making improvements in my life to be able to, you know, accommodate that. And yes, I think nutrition has a support system to be able to, you know, reduce stress and things like that. Like if you feel like you're in control of one area of your life, then the other things don't feel as overwhelming and stuff like that. And nutrition is definitely one of those things to help boost energy and mood and confidence and things like that for you to make better decisions. But you don't always have to be seeking change in your nutrition. It's okay for you to just live a little bit, whether that's a month at maintenance or several months, for you to address other areas of your life that may be needing more help and more support right now. So that's just been my own personal thing. Like for me to be driving into an intentional any intentional phase with my nutrition was probably not necessarily going to help. It was going to add more stress to the cup rather than,
the benefits weren't there.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are going through navigating nutrition of your own, like hopefully that's given you
some things to ponder and reflect.
Yes. Hopefully it gives you some things that you can start to monitor, you can start to manage, and how you can go about changing things over time yourself. But if you are wanting some support and some accountability, obviously, or you want to learn some of those skill sets so that you can actually do it yourself, then we have got nutrition coaching. So get in contact with us. We have a few different tiers of our services. We like to start people off with at least weekly and fortnightly coaching. We'll get them through that for a period of time to
set some foundations,
build that underpinning stuff, and then from there, if you're looking at just doing more consulting based stuff over time, to just check in and help you navigate your own plan.
Steer
yeah, exactly. I think it's more like, let's just observe the map of where you're going and just make sure that you're not shooting
on the
yourself
right
on the right track.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. Well, that's it from us for today. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Yep.
Adios.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned in the podcast today, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gyms based in the Gold Coast and Townsville. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram for any updates on what we are currently doing, and we'll see you all in the next episode.